I firmly believe that VR is the future of video games. Unfortunately, the companies currently leading the charge into the world of VR are less than ideal. In addition to the normal big company greed, it is more than clear that the talking heads of such companies have no idea what VR will mean in the future. I mean, what are these ads? None of these ads show an accurate depiction of VR. Thankfully, the actual developers understand that VR's future is in gaming first and practical simulation later. Most headsets have a series of tech demo experiences that show off the features of the headsets in short, toy box-based video games. Seeing as I have an Oculus Quest, and this is my first review covering the wild world of VR, let's talk about the 3 main demo experiences a current Quest player would experience on the system. Seriously, that's pretty much the only reason why I'm making this video. I want to cover a lot of VR games in the future, and these seem like the obvious place to start. Sorry. Welcome to virtual reality. First Steps was developed by Oculus to be the very first thing you see when you start up a new Oculus Quest headset. It serves as a tutorial for the basic movements of the system, as well as a brief showcase to a couple possible scenarios you may experience in games. Starting you off with a bit of a show, the demo opens with various scenes to assure you made a good purchase. These scenes are almost Disney-esque in presentation and are only a few seconds each. The style is this faux low-poly gradient look that's quite nice. The scenes also make a point to show off the 3D without being anywhere close to intense or boxed in. It's honestly a perfect, non-offensive opening that won't scare away any new or casual players. The last thing you want to do is spook them with something actually terrifying. We eventually settle in on our main area, a relaxing, gentle, and surprisingly empty scene of near-still boats and balloons. There is a table in front of us and a subtitle board straight ahead. A woman's voice will guide us through the basics, what the wall guardian is, how to use the controllers, and how to grab and point in VR. Do as she says and we'll be given toys to play with. Obviously, they're not exactly fun to watch and are very basic even by virtual toy standards. But if this is your first time playing, these are great to get a hang of things. Don't worry about dropping anything either, as anything that touches the ground is respawned back in its original place. They give you stackable cubes to test out the physics in grabbing, a rope ball to hit and test your in-game reflexes, and a ping pong ball and paddle to test both at the same time. Unfortunately, the demo's physics are not the best, and the movement of objects like the ping pong are off. But this is just an introduction to the concepts, and proper full-length games are where you're supposed to master these later. After you try out everything, a new set of toys are given. There is the remote-controlled blimp, showing how controls in games are just as viable as real-life ones, assuming all the buttons are mapped. There are also some paper planes to play with that introduce throwing, angles, and more advanced physics simulation. Finally, there are the pull-string rockets. These things are more boring than they should be, though it is fun when they fly too close to your face, or when they just give up and die mid-flight. As I've said before, these toys are basic even by VR standards. Thankfully, there is something else we can do in this game. After a bit, a game console and a couple cartridges will spawn on the table. Simply put a cartridge in and press the button to be teleported to a new scene in gameplay mode. The first we'll cover is the shooting gallery. We have 3 gun options to choose from: a single pistol, dual-wield pistols, and a full automatic. Once you pick up a gun, a timed section will begin where you can shoot various moving shapes flying about to rack up a personal high score. Various shapes give various point amounts and the patterns are reasonably predictable. The pistol feels pretty good and is friendly for either hand. The dual pistols are the same, but now there's two of them. The automatic is where things get a bit odd. First off, the scope isn't quite right. Additionally, in an attempt to be as user-comfortable as possible, the gun literally stretches to continuously stay the perfect length for the player. This is far from the only time a VR game has or will do this, but there's at least one gun enthusiast insulted by the concept. Once satisfied with your high score, simply pull out the cartridge from the console to return to the hub. The other cartridge available will bring you to the dance room. And yeah, it's painful. Even if you are a good dancer, the system only tracks your headset and controller location, meaning any hip or footwork is lost. To help encourage the user to move, you're given a dance partner in the form of this lanky robot guy. He'll mostly mirror your few tracked movements with the occasional breakaway to do his own dance. At some point, you'll be encouraged to spin him around a few times, but him waiting for said spin just increases the awkward tension. The dance is rather short, but you can repeat it as many times as you like. While I'm definitely not a fan, a younger or more casual player could easily love it. Personal opinions aside, it is good for its intended purpose. And that's about all there is for this demo. The idea was to give you a good first impression of the headset, and it does that pretty well. The graphics are pleasant, everything is basic but serviceable, and while not particularly interesting, you're not meant to linger too long before leaving to start VR proper. Okay overall, but I doubt anyone would keep it installed after getting their first real game or two. Now that we got the basics out of the way, let's further explore the control features in our next game.
Have fun!
I found Rob's long-lost cousin. First Contact is a free VR experience developed by Funbits Interactive and Oculus Rex and published by Oculus. It was made to demonstrate the Oculus Touch features, which gave increased hand control and vibration features with compatible controllers. These features are considered basic minimum today, but were exciting back at release. Getting into the game itself, there's no main menu or anything like that here either. Like First Steps, it starts you immediately in the game. I assume this is to make showroom demos as smooth as possible. You have a moment to get familiar with your surroundings. There isn't much to do yet, but you can play with the worst bouncy balls ever, mess with the toy trailer I'm pretty sure is a reference to something, but I don't know what, and discover that anything that touches the ground is gone forever. Look, this game is less than 10 minutes long content-wise, so you aren't meant to spend enough time in here to miss any deleted objects. You'll get new toys in a second anyway. When ready, close the head case of the little Wally knockoff here and start him up. He won't approach until you wave, by the way. The closest thing to a story this game has is you appear to be in an 80s era personal lab on an alien planet. This little robot guy seems to be your main experiment, though there is also indications that he's awake when you aren't around. And this is the first time y'all have met, so whatever. Again, 10-minute demo. As you interact with items, not Wally will produce more floppy disk. With the exception of the first floppy that powers up the facility, these disks are used in the 3D printer to create toys for the player to interact with, all of which use vibration to simulate touch. The first non-power floppers is my favorite. I I legit wish we had these in the main Oculus home screens. These little butterflies can go up to 4 max and will casually fly around and land on objects. If they perch on your hand, you'll feel just the lightest touch, which is kind of awesome. You can have 2 on one hand, and I can't help but think of those photos where butterflies land on crocodiles. Those butterflies are drinking the crocodile's tears, by the way. Seriously, butterflies are morbid. In addition to tears, they also drink the blood of trees and animals. But hey, nutrients are nutrients. Anyway, next is the noisemakers. The jingle bells are nice, and even produce tiny snowflakes. The racket rattles... well... mine broke. Jokes aside, that is actually a nice touch. After the rattles, we could choose between 3 new floppy disks. One is a cube that once printed will fuck with the gravity for a minute. This would be fun if the objects that fell on the ground weren't gone forever, and I found myself more worried about losing items I haven't played with yet than enjoying the experience. Thankfully, floppy disk at least float and respond if dropped. Next floppers is a gun. Multiple floating targets will spawn as long as you hold the gun, and you can have a casual shooting gallery session. If you play with the targets in the Oculus Rift personal home, they work identical to the ones there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was copy-paste. The gun itself resembles a retro home console light gun, and fires Nerf bullets. You can't really shoot the robot, but I found out the hard way that you can use the gun to kill the butterflies. Next is a set of rockets, and I'm sad to say that these are near exact copies of the ones from First Steps. They even just give up on life after a bit like the other ones. I guess now the rockets are red, and I'm only pointing that out to get ahead of that one commenter. You know who you are. And a funny coincidence? My first rocket died just above the robot's head when he was starting a new animation. And for a split second, I thought it was a scripted sequence where the robot would react to being hit on the head. But alas, he was just presenting me with the final golden floppy. That brings me into probably the thing that bothered me the most while I was playing. The robot's animations and interactions are surprisingly limited. With him being the face of the game, I thought we would be able to directly interact with him. Outside of the initial hand wave section though, that isn't really the case. When you spawn in a new toy, you will briefly interact with it, such as murdering a butterfly or watching your rattle. But the millisecond the animation is over, he'll immediately push you to start the next floppy disk. I get his impatience with the power floppy at the beginning, but everyone after that made me a little annoyed. He will either constantly hold out or point towards the next floppy, and it annoyed me more than once. Mix in his lack of interactions, including flat-out refusals to participate, and it just made me feel like he was added to pressure the player into moving faster rather than enjoy the experience at their own pace. Ironically, this system also means you can't speedrun the game either, as you have to satisfy his playtime requirements on each toy before he decides you can continue. It's probably not a good thing that the cute little robot on the cover is one of the worst parts of your game. Well, to get some revenge, let's ignore him a little and look about. Outside of the floppies, there are several small things in your workspace you can fiddle around with. In addition to the previously mentioned junk, there is random pieces of hardware and trash, buttons that change a random psychedelic image. Reminds me of those old retro sci-fi computers from the movies. A few sound effects buttons. And a few VHS tapes here and there. The VHS tapes are disappointingly short little animations. I like the little dragon animation and the security footage of an alien ostrich fucking up our shit, but the anime parody was just a looped GIF and the most annoying sounds the devs could come up with. One of these tapes is also where they hid the credits, which is a good way to do it considering the lack of menus or end screen. Speaking of, let's use that last floppy. Turns out that everything was a simulation all along. And I mean, no shit. This is a video game. And it also is meant to justify the magic 3D printer and the occasional particle effect. I don't dislike this ending, but it does take away from the alien planet robot lab in a trailer setting. It then boots us back to the home screen, like an itch.io horror game. Despite the proper ending, being kicked back like this feels a little dejecting. Like the game got tired of my shit and wanted to close before I can press a non-existent replay button. Oh well. Overall, First Contact is good for a tech demo. Like First Steps, if you think of this as a short game, you will be sorely disappointed. As an introduction to the then new touch controllers, it does its job just fine and then some. Despite having an initial setting, I wouldn't say it has a story beyond that. You can't even say you became friends with the robot, as it serves as more of a glorified bookshelf than a proper character. Despite that, what we do get is nice, and it's definitely an improvement over First Steps. If you haven't played it and you're looking for a short, free experience in VR, then go ahead and give it a peek, though no one will fault you for uninstalling it immediately afterwards. Let's see if our next and final demo can do better.
A new apprentice! Place your hands on my rune of judgment. Rune of qualification.
Magic. Elixir is a VR tech demo showing off the hand-tracking technology built into Oculus Quest headsets. Rather than make a simple experience like First Steps, developer Magnipus made a short narrative-focused game with a fun use for the new technology. You're applying to become the apprentice to an all-powerful witch. However, she really doesn't have much for you to do just now. She leaves briefly, and in the short time she is gone, you open up her magic chest, freeing 3 magical eyeballs who then wreak havoc on her workshop. Everything is controlled by your real-life hands, from the typical picking things up to teleporting around the lab to controlling the elements and flipping off the camera. There is no controller support in this game, as it is a tech demo first and foremost. The creativity is wonderful, but certain motions might trick up the sensors. Teleporting often gave me a hard time, and some of the magic might need a few retries to get working. It also might be because I have girly-ass hands, but the in-game hands are not one-to-one to the players in size or dimension, making them occasionally feel like oversized gloves. The story is easy to invest in. You wish to learn magic and have tracked down a witch with the intent of becoming her apprentice. You appear to be in an alternate dimension under the control of the witch, but she doesn't seem to be there in person. She can see everything that happens, but she herself is a disembodied voice. You and her minions are the only ones who can directly affect the world. However, she can use magic to poof things around. Unlike the previous games in this video, this one has an actual main menu. Not only does it give you a space to try out the new hand trackers, but through updates they've added language options and an interactive credits page. Real quick going through the languages, the only talking character is the witch, and changing the language will replay her opening line. It's funny to hear how each language interprets the character. Her original voice is smooth, almost slithery, with a good mix of playful seduction and mischievousness.
A new apprentice! Place your hands on my rune of judgment. Rune of qualification.
German and Spanish nails the same balanced voice.
Hola, estudiante. Coloca las manos sobre la runa del juicio. La runa de calificación.
Ein neuer Lehrling. Lege deine Hände auf meine Rune des Urteils. Rune der Qualifikation.
While Japanese goes full untrustworthy witch.
あら、新しい見習いさんね。鑑定のルーンに両手を乗せてちょうだい。これで適性を確かめます。
And to no one's surprise, the French and Italian languages go full in on the seduction and drop the trickster tones entirely.
Ah, un nouvel apprenti. Placez vos mains sur ma rune de jugement. Ma rune de qualification.
Un nuovo apprendista. Poggia le mani sulla runa del giudizio. La runa della qualifica.
Starting the game proper, we begin with a movement tutorial.
Let me teach you a teleportation spell. I find it so much easier than walking. Hans will instruct you. Hans! Hans! There you are. Now, do as Hans does, apprentice.
By imitating Hans, we learn how to teleport around the space. By making a triangle with your hands and using it to frame the individual stones on the floor, we can teleport to that specific stone. This works as well as can be expected, but as I mentioned before, the hand tracking can be a bit wonky. The stone map spots also don't always gel well with your real-life play space, and teleporting into furniture or too far away is not uncommon. As much as I prefer full movement, that would have been weird to map to the hand tracking, and a beginner demo like this needed to avoid anything that might cause motion sickness. Once we prove that we can move around, we are allowed into the witch's work lab. The lab area is very well done. A mix of candlelight and glowing objects build up the magic feel, and there are several objects around to inspect and be distracted by. Hell, the first thing that happens when you arrive is meet a dragon. Hudge himself is cute and all, but I don't know how I feel about his vomit being an important set piece.
You see the dragon? Poke his tummy. Ah, the science of alchemy. Submerge those healthy hands into the cauldron. Let's see what happens.
I don't want to stick my hands into dragon vomit. Doing so, however, starts up the main gimmick. By sticking your hands into various things around the lab, you imbue them with a magic power. Each hand has an effect when you make a fist, and touching candles with a hand will light them the appropriate color. Using water from the nearby barrel will remove the effect and return you to the default hands. The, vomit will turn your hands yellow-green, and making a fist will blow bubbles. The fire hands are yellow with flames, as well as many other effects are 2D and reminds me of those fire animations all the anime YouTubers use. It looks really good here, and helps keep everything lighthearted and borderline cartoony. The electricity hands have a space thing going on, being purple void with stars and yellow outlines. If you make a fist, the hands will fuck up the bitrate of your recording. The sun flare, gyros, eyes of Sauron things are neat though.
Brilliant! You're going to love being my servant. Apprentice, I'll just pop down to the archives for your starting paperwork and... Oh, you see that box beside the cauldron? The one with the eyeball? Don't poke it while I'm away. Be right back.
Funny enough, if you don't poke the eye box immediately, the voice clips of the witch telling you not to poke it will loop in the distance.
Poking the eye box beyond, remember? I'm almost finished.
Wait long enough, and you even get this.
Hi, okay, I'm Emily. I'm the lead designer. I know she's telling you not to poke the eye box, but I'm here to tell you go ahead and poke it. Okay, sorry.
Anyway, we poke the box, unleashing these little eyeball guys.
Here we are. It took ages to... Oh! You underhanded apprentice! Those mischievous eyeballs will ruin my contraptions! Get them!
Each of them gravitate to a specific object we've already interacted with. Follow each eyeball's instructions and we'll upgrade the previous magics to better versions. For example, let's start with the electricity eye.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine.
It opens up the wire box of the electrodes, and if you zap it with the electricity hands, you upgrade it to give you robot hands instead.
A device so nice, you'll find fun.
The robot hands only have 3 digits, but after a moment of acclimation, it feels surprisingly right. Making fists charges up electricity, which can then be fired towards a specific direction. Be careful with these hands as they misfire the easiest. You have 2 options here. Either do what the eyeball wants and power up the nearby astrolabe.
Oh, rubbish. The warranty on that astrolabe just expired.
Or do what the witch wants and murder the eyeball with electricity. Once you do one, you can't do the other, and the number of eyeballs you kill or don't kill decide your ending. The next eye is staring into the vomit, wondering what it's doing with its life.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Go ahead and poke it.
Oh, my hidden potation. It's still a bit raw.
Squeeze a bit of blue into it, and dunk your hands in for...
You like this thing, do you?
Ew. The tentacle hands are neat, with your fingers losing any bone structure and gaining a delay when following the rest of your hand. Making a fist will also squirt out a tiny bit of goo, but unlike the other hands, the powers aren't really used for anything. However, the presence of the hentai hands attracts Irving. What is Irving?
Oh, and now you've got Irving making a mess.
Fuck if I know. But he's living in the sewer drain. You can even take a peek at him sometimes. Right now, though, with him out of the grate, you can poke him in the eye. Keep in mind, though, that this counts as helping the eyeball. If you want to help the witch, instead push the small eye into the pond to drown it. These deaths are so gruesome. Next is the fire eye. Add a bit of purple to the fire and we can get demon hands.
I'll admit, the demonic hand look is in this season. You might have to give me a pair.
Honestly, these are my favorite. In addition to looking cool, they also grow Wolverine blades when you make a fist. Using these, we can cut this rope.
No, not my firebug collection.
I love firebugs, by the way. They are all over the main menu and I love trying to catch them without squishing them. Like the butterflies from First Contact, I wish I could take them with me back to the Oculus home screens. To make the witch happy, instead make the eyeball so angry that it flies off and explodes.
Looks like Team Rocket's blasting off again!
After you deal with all three eyes, you'll get one of two endings. If you caused too much mischief and made the witch angry, she'll usher you out.
Just look at this place. I've no use for some try-hard apprentice with a mind of their own. Out! Out, I say! Out, out, out!
If you made her happy, she'll accept you as her apprentice.
I suppose you're a decent enough apprentice. You can start at my earliest convenience, mortal. That'll be in 331 years.
Either way, you're kicked out, still enchanted with the last hands you tried on. As a one last show off of the tracking technology, she'll have you sign a non-disclosure agreement. The pen is far from perfect, and you only have a few seconds to sign, or not sign, before the game moves you along. I can only assume this was to minimize the number of dick butts people would draw all over it. We fade back to the main menu. One of the features added with the updates is a free play mode that is now available to the player. You can play around in the workshop with no pressure or time limits from the characters. Just derp around in the magic as you see fit. Not even Pudge is there to judge you. At most, you'll see Irving and the firebugs. This is a very nice addition, and it allows a player to check out anything they may have missed playing the main story. Personally, I had fun just messing around with the hands again a bit longer. This game was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed exploring about, and the magic setting is brilliant. I really appreciate them putting such a fun story to this free demo, especially after playing the other games in this video. The whole thing felt like a prologue to a neat animated movie or something, and if a full game where he plays the apprentice came out, I would be all over that shit. The characters make this game though. The witch is delightfully sinister, despite us never seeing her. Her voice is inherently mocking but flirty, and it's not hard to see yourself trying to impress the owner of such a voice, and probably failing. Pudge the dragon and his bug eyes are cute in that doofus kinda way. Even the teleportation tutorial has a character. How expressive can a pair of hands be? Name it Hans and we'll see. I even love the little magical eyeballs. These guys are expressive and curious, and are trying to show you something they don't quite understand themselves. Like a little kid who just finished their first science class. If I had to make a complaint, I would say that the looping voice lines and the timed second half kinda got on my nerves. But even then, that was mostly fixed with updates and added features. All of this, plus the fact there are no controllers outside of your real hand movement, and I would say this is the best tech demo on the Oculus Quest. If you want to show off the system to a family member, especially if they don't play video games, show this one. Showing it off to my own family has given me great results. And it doesn't limit itself to being a glorified toy box like the other demos in this video. All in all, I would say this game is definitely worth your time.
Come back when you're ready to learn some real magic. That is, if you think you can handle it.
I definitely need to thank y'all for watching this far. With this being about free demos, there is a distinctive lack of interest in these games. But with how many VR games I want to review on this channel, it only seemed right to start with these. That in mind, I promise some more exciting games to come. If you have a headset and are interested in playing these yourself, I will link their respective store pages in the description. I will also link my respective blind playthroughs of each game below as well. Please keep in mind that my playthrough of Elixir was before all of the updates I mentioned in this video, though I suppose that makes it a good before and after comparison. I would also really appreciate if you like this video, share it with anyone who might be interested, and sub to this channel so you can get immediate updates on any future reviews. I also have a Let's Play / stream channel and a video game ambience channel if either of those sound interesting to you. Everything will be linked below. I'm also curious to what's everyone's thoughts and experiences with VR is. So if you have any opinions or stories to tell, go ahead and share them in the comments below. It'll give me a good idea on how to approach VR videos in the future. And with that, I will end it here. If all goes as planned, next video will be over the 2 Dinosaur Island demos for VR, both of which have now been removed from the Steam store forever. I'll also be starting YouTube shorts on this channel in the form of 1-minute reviews. Don't worry if those are not your thing, as I'll be keeping them to weeks we otherwise wouldn't have any video at all. Finally, the big review of this month will be Northern Journey, and I really look forward to showing you guys such a unique and interesting game. I've been working on it for months now, and I'm confident it'll be worth the wait. Happy New Year, and thank you guys so much for all your support so far.
See you next time, apprentice. I'm sure you can handle it.